Okay, so our next session is a new session for this year. Is the community note session. It's a session where people can pitch interesting ideas, and we have looked at these ideas as well, and we decided to ask these people to have a small presentation, and they will also have 2 pages in the proceedings. So the first one, who is not interested in player, how important a player is for a team offensive flow? Interesting idea. So we'll get to hear about it.
Hello everyone, my name is Louis Boulet, and I'm super excited to be able to present to you all my work on merging shot data to measure how important a player is to their team's offensive flow. So originally with this project, I feel like we were at a really good space in terms of being able to measure honest impact and general contributions, but how a player's toolkit and specific portions of their play styles factored in was something that I believe is underrepresented and what I've been wanting to dive into for a while now. So this would entail a lot of manually tracked data and passing related metrics. Now, there's obviously a few problems with this. For example, if we wanted to look at a player's ability to create off the rush, we would take zone entries and the expected points and goals coming off of those entries, or flipping it for playmaking ability, we could look at expected primary assists. So a lot of situational expected goals. However, we don't really have this wealth of passing data available. The NHL only tracks assists on goals rather than shots on goal, let alone shot attempts. And most public projects don't really have the scope or sample set necessary to do this on a league-wide level. Where we would find this would be privately within teams or companies, but that's obviously way too expensive for someone in the general public like me to acquire. However, there is still some really great resources out there. For example, we have MoneyPuck, which is one of the foremost hockey analytics websites out there that aggregates and cleans data directly from the NHL API and makes it available for download on their website. So, for example, they have a shot data set that is very highly detailed with a bunch of different parameters such as coordinates and events relating to the shots, which they've used to create an expected goal model that is attached to every shot attempt within their data set. On the other hand, we have Corey Schneider's All Three Zones project, which is an absolutely invaluable resource to the public as he manually tracks hundreds of games per season to give us extra context that we wouldn't find anywhere else. For examples, passes all the way down to the tertiary level are recorded for each shot attempt, and more info about the offense, like if it came off the rush, off the forecheck, or whatever it may be, is also recorded. So how do we essentially bridge the data gap between these two? So what I've done is written a script in Python that takes every all three zones shot attempt that was recorded and whittles down the possible options on the money puck side of things to find its most likely match. This is done doing filters upon the shooter, the type of shot, the eventual outcome of it, and the time difference between the two. Now, what we get is the more detailed coordinates and expected goal values from the money puck side blended with the context and pass tracking from all three zones, giving us around 25 to 35,000 shot attempts per season, depending on how many games were tracked. In terms of efficiency, around 90% of the all three zones shot attempts that were recorded get matched. And for how long it takes to run this script over a full season's worth, around how long I've been talking on the slide, so roughly 25-ish seconds. Now we have our data set, we can move on with the actual analysis. And one thing that I've always really been passionate about in my undergrad, throughout my time at UAuto and my data science and machine learning courses, is network analysis. So for those who aren't quite familiar with it, it's all about evaluating relationships and connections within a network. So how do we kind of translate that and format it for hockey? So obviously we've now built our whole passing network using the money puck and all three zones blended data. So that will be the structure that we'll be evaluating. The nodes, as you can see on the right in red and orange, are the skaters. The edges connecting them are the passes. We can also direct them, give them a direction from sender to the receiver, and assign weights to each of these edges, which will be an estimation of a sort of pass value. So this is done using the pass separation from the shot, so the eventual shot that came from this passing system, whether that was a tertiary, secondary, or primary assist, and the resulting threat level of the shot. So we're using expected goal value for that. Now, in network analysis, we have these metrics called centrality measures, and they are used, and there's many of them out there that function a little bit differently. and result in different definitions, but what they do is essentially quantify how important a node is to its network. But as I said, there's so many of them, they kind of change the distinction of importance in each different situation. So what I've done is I've gathered 4 different centrality measures to build what I've decided to call an offensive puck movement profile, and we'll go over each of them here. So the first one is betweenness centrality. It's one of the more common ones that are found in network analysis. And in our case, it finds whenever a player lies on the shortest path between any of his 2 line mates. So this really helps us find the key play connectors on the team, the real facilitators who have a lot of the offense flow through them. So for example, here we have Tomas Hertl for most of the 2023-24 season. He spent on San Jose before being traded to Vegas. And obviously he was the main piece there on that team through which the offense went through, giving him a high flow score. Up next is PageRank centrality. This one's a little bit more complicated in its calculation, but essentially it's an iterative process that loops over multiple times before getting to its final state to find which node connects the other highly valued nodes within the network often, essentially acting as a bridge between those important pieces within it. So this is to find the really influential playmakers, those who have a lot of command over how the offense is going to unfold when they're on the ice. So looking at Gustav Forsling, very often he acts as the main piece connecting 2 other big pieces on his team. For example, a Barkov and a Kachuk, he acts as the main connector between them, or the Sams, Reinhardt, and Bennett. So this gives him a pretty high influence score. Next is information centrality. This one I wouldn't say is reserved for more tertiary roles on a line, but is very prominent there. These players really enhance the offensive efficiency of their team's passing systems. They make sure that it is very adaptable and keeps options open should any sort of interruptions arise in their main flows and main pathways. So this is a bit more of a support role, but still very important. As we can see, Vladislav Nemesnikov, usually for those who know him, is not as big of an offensive piece, but a lot of the times he plays up in Winnipeg's top 6 and helps to make sure that those options are open at all times. And lastly, we're ending with the simplest one, which is weighted degree centrality. This one just sums the weights in and out of a node and finds players that are very highly involved offensively. So even though they're not making any sort of groundbreaking connections, they're receiving and passing a lot of pucks. So Colton Parayko, again, might not be the most dynamic of all players, but he's a very key cog in the Blues offense from the back line, and that gives them a really high volume score. So as you can see, we have these 4 centrality measures at the bottom of the profile, which with pie charts and in percentile form, but we also have this big 1 number importance to teammate offense metric. So how do we essentially come about that? So what we've done is we've aggregated the data for each team game throughout the season, get the centrality measures for each player for each game, scale it by position, regress it for smaller samples, and average them out. Then we sum these centrality measures, all 4 together, to get our importance to teammate offense score. This gives us a more stable metric than if we were to take any of the ones by themselves, since when they're alone, they can be fairly volatile, but we give them a good base by summing all 4 together. It also gives us a more diverse look into how a player is contributing because, again, by themselves, it's just one definition of how important they may be. Whereas when you combine them, we cover 4 different areas. And this gives us the usual culprits at the top, the McDavids, Kucherovs, McKinnons, all of those guys factor very well in all 4 of the centrality measures and thus finish top 5 league-wide in our big 1 main metric. Now we'll end it off with a quick case study of how the different centrality measures will work together on a chemistry basis and those interactions. So this data is all for the 2023-24 season, and the ranks are league-wide amongst forwards. So we'll use my hometown team, Ottawa Senators, and their first line for this. Starting at left wing, everyone who knows Brady Tkachuk knows he plays a very specific high-danger type of game. So a lot of Ottawa's offense is geared towards giving him a chance in tight, whether that's a tip, rebound, net jam, general crash and bang towards the net play. So he has a lot of sway over how the offense unfolds, giving him a top 3 influence score. Moving over to center, we have Tim Stützle, who is the main puck carrier and passer on the line. Everything kind of goes through him when they're developing plays, and he is the main piece through which everyone acts around, giving him a top 3 flow score. And lastly, as I mentioned on the information centrality slide, Giroux is the tertiary piece on this line, but he's still a very smart and capable passer, specifically when it comes to making sure that there's always options open and the team is able to progress towards getting a shot in their offensive possessions, giving him a top 10 efficiency score. So even though, as we can see, all these players are very capable in each of the four facets, how each of them specializes in one specific area really helps them overall drive good results as a line consistently. So, Taksalmikit, thank you so much to the people of LINHAC for allowing me to present this. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did and you want to learn more, there's a full write-up available at lbhockey.com, and on with the rest of the conference.
Nice to see Gustav Forsling there. He actually brought the Stanley Cup to Linköping last year, so that was fun to see. Louis is online, so if there are any questions. No questions at the moment. He does have this website that he showed you. You can find it by Googling also. He has quite a lot of articles regarding the work he's doing. One thing that caught my eye was because we talked about fan engagement last year. He actually has invented the Pokemon, which is how would NHL players look like, or what would their characteristics be if they were a Pokemon? And then you can play with this and build up your own Pokemon training. That was quite interesting.